We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred.
With Maxwell Silverhammer.
We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.
Oh, yes, bitches. Welcome to Nothing Sacred. I am Maxwell Silverhammer. Cruise control had a prior engagement as usual. He's the one with the life. I don't. Anyway, on the show today, we got Jamie Borden, who actually is the owner of a company called Critical Incident Response, which we'll talk about. Plus, he has quite the extensive law enforcement career. And he was giving me some health tips and things before we got on. So, Jamie, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Max.
Man, so let's go into that health stuff you were talking about real quick. Tell us your little routine that you do.
Yeah, so and it was all purpose driven too. My whole thing was I'm teaching across the country. I'm traveling incessantly. I'm on the podium for 8 hours a day, 3 days at a time, no matter where I'm at. So that's extremely taxing on the body. It's exhausting. And I thought, you know what, as the company started to take off, I thought if I'm going to maintain this process protocol, I need to get myself prepped for it and be ready for it to take off. Luckily I did. So, I put in a cold plunge and a sauna, a gym, and because everything I do is here at my home office. I work on my classes and cases. I'm an expert on multiple cases across the country, and so every morning, man, for the last 7 months, I get up. The first thing I do is work out, do a workout. I work out every single day, and then I get into the sauna at 210 degrees, between 190 and 210, and I do that for about 24 to 26 minutes. I get out and get into 39-degree water.
Oh, shit.
For about 6 minutes. And I can tell you, I can guarantee you that I'm happy twice a day, and that's as soon as I get out of that cold plunge. So I do that. Yeah, I do that routine, twice a day religiously, and man, it's changed my life, brother. I just published a book, and that book, Anatomy of a Critical Incident: Navigating Controversy. I've been working on that book for about 5 years, getting data together and organizing it. When I started doing this cold plunge, sauna, and workout routine was a tipping point. My level of clarity and focus was so intense. I literally finished the organization and the publishing on that book in that 7 month period. I did as much work in 7 months as I did in 4.5 up to that point. So it was it was a life changer, man. I mean, and here's the thing. We get older, and there's two ways you can go, man. You can become sedentary and die, or you can get to living and take the time it takes to get healthy, maintain that health, and stay driven. And that's the pathway I've chosen. And man, I'm certainly not sorry for it for 1 second.
Dude, I'll tell you what, that will probably help you a lot with stress too, and you probably have less anxiety, in dealing with problems. And this is important for law enforcement. You will see a lot of out of shape police officers in a lot of cases.
You do. And, life takes over, brother. I mean, these guys and these men and women are out, they're grinding, they're putting up with the administrative stresses of just the straight bullshit that goes on at these police departments. And I lived through it. I was a cop for many, many years here in Las Vegas in Henderson. And I know what that stress is like. And I will tell you, you're absolutely spot on. Taking the stand, the stress for, the schedule and getting reports done. I think I had, 35, 40 cases last year. Most experts at my level take 7 to 8 cases a year. And this is all I do. So this and music, and you're absolutely right. The stress is still there, but how I process it is very different. Things do not affect me the same way they used to. Like at any level. It's talk about rolling with the punches. It's an overhaul. And you listen to people like Joe Rogan and a lot of the sports superstars that he has on his shows. A lot of these folks are really into this cold plunge sauna routine, and it's for real, man. I mean, you can, and it isn't something that is like, yeah, I kind of think there's a difference. It's fucking instantaneous, man. You feel it and know the difference in a heartbeat, and it does what's called fat browning, right? So it rearranges the fat cells in your body so your body burns them more efficiently. And there's a whole science behind it, which I'm no scientist. I'm just reaping the benefits of other people's knowledge. Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, I would recommend a regimen of this to any person for every health reason that you can think of, from stress to inflammation to clarity, concentration levels, and just overall wellness. It's something that you will notice immediately, and that's one of the reasons I do it twice a day. I figured if there's going to be benefits from doing it 3 times a week, there's going to be more benefits from doing it every day of the week, and even more if I do it twice a week, twice every
Right.
day.
So this is a twice a day regimen, or just
I
once a
No, I do it. I started out at 4:30 in the morning. The first 2 hours of every day belong 100% to me and my health. And then I work until I'm in the office by 6:30, quarter to seven. I work until 7:30 at night, and I do the whole routine again at night. And
wow.
knowing I was going to be on this podcast, I started this regimen at 5:30, knowing that I was going to have to adjust one way or the other, and I'd rather get my sleep. And that's one of the other things, man. I sleep better and deeper and more consistently than I ever have in my life. Every night I sleep like a baby. And it's a bizarre feeling when you are operating with a rested mind and soul. It's
Oh,
crazy, the difference.
dude, I used to have sleep apnea way back in the day.
Yeah.
And you don't notice it. You're in big denial at the time. You're like, oh, and even like women I dated at the time would say, yeah, it sounded like you stopped breathing last night. I got scared. I did. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I'm blowing it off. And I was just kind of a fucked up person. You know what I'm saying? Just my whole attitude towards things, and the way I dealt with stress, and I did some really dumb shit. And once I lost the weight, and I was they finally put me on a CPAP machine. Man, you realize, like, holy shit, it's like driving a car that's a piece of shit, and then all of a sudden you get a brand new car finally, and you're going, why did I wait so long? You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, and it's crazy. So, and part of the regiment that I've adopted is intermittent fasting. So I eat once a day. I'm 23 and a half hours between meals, and sometimes I forget to eat then. I mean, it's just, there's all these things that are happening that assist with your sleep cycle, that assist with, digesting food and metabolism and all these different components that go into it. And you're absolutely right. I've always been healthy, but I've never been in good health, right? It's like,
Right.
and because that starts at a cognitive level, and I need it because I'm engaged in intricate, deep shit for, 12, 15 hours a day. And I need to be where I'm at with my health. And I'll tell you again, I'll recommend it to everybody that's struggling with anything. The answers lie in handling things. It's not just all about eating kale, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I will suck down a donut as fast as any person in the world, and I have a clear conscience about it because I only eat that one time a day. So I eat whatever I want. I still eat healthy stuff, but I don't hesitate to eat happy food either, right? I'm not gonna
Yes.
be unhappy, brother. I'm not gonna, you'll catch me eating, a chocolate bar or a piece of dark chocolate and
And you're cool with it. There's no guilt. You know what I mean?
shit. No, man, I don't give a shit. And here's the thing, right? I know I'm not eating horribly. I'm certainly not anywhere near diabetic.
Yeah.
But I am going to eat things that satisfy my soul a little bit. I'm doing enough on the outside where I ain't cutting out bread, brother. You know what I mean? I'm not.
I know. I know.
So, but I do eat well. But it's not that extreme on that end of it. Everything else I'm doing is helpful. I try to stay away from sugar and things of that nature for the most part. But it occasionally slips in, and you ain't gonna catch me losing sleep over it.
Right. And that's the key. I like how you made the distinction earlier. There's obviously you can be a healthy person, but can you be in good health? That's the key right there. So you could, and that's what that was my thinking. I'm healthy. I'm not sick. So, why should I do anything? Why should I change anything? And then it wasn't until I figured out, hey, wait a minute, I'm tired all the time. It's hard for me to walk long distances. And at the time I was only in my late 30s. So this is like, I can't be doing this. So,
being in good health, it doesn't necessarily start, with working out and doing those things. That's all part of it. But to me, being in good health is how you interact with other people at a cognitive and emotional level. And I ain't going to get philosophical on you here because that's not who I am. But what I will tell you is that being in good health is a mental point of view. And I know cats that work out all the time and they're ripped and they're miserable motherfuckers. And that's just,
I'm laughing because I know some.
Yeah, and it's listen, good on you. I get it all, but there's far more to being, like I said, it's living in good health, not just being healthy minded, healthy on the exterior and the mechanical side of your life. My brain is different than it used to be, brother. It's and I tell you, I attribute a lot of that to the intermittent fasting, the consistent workout schedule, and it ain't extreme. I'm not lifting heavy weight. I'm not doing, I jump rope with a weighted jump rope, for 12 minutes a day. I do a routine, body weight routine with pull-ups and dips, and I've got a one of these, Bowflex adjustable weight sets that you can adjust the bar so the dumbbells go up to 52 pounds. And I'm doing all these things in the morning. I don't work out more than 25 minutes a morning, right? It's not an intense workout, but it is consistent. I do a little, a lot, not a lot, a little. And it's paying off, brother. I mean, I'm in 29 pants waist on my jeans. I haven't been in a 29 since before I started the first academy in 1996.
Dude, I don't think I've seen 29 since I was probably like 17 or something.
Yeah, so, but it's a good, healthy place to be. I've got to collect cars. One of them sits so low. I literally, if I wasn't in the shape I'm in right now, I wouldn't be able to get in and out of the fucking thing. So,
wow.
It's important to me to stay healthy, to get to enjoy some of the things I've worked all my life to get. You know what I mean?
Right. Man, I wish my co-host was here. There's some of this stuff because like he does the fasting thing too, which I couldn't do. I love food too much, but it is what it is. And you guys could vibe on that. And I know he talked to me about the wind. What's the guy, the cold water, the Wim Hof theory
Wim
or
Hof,
whatever?
Yeah, Wim Hof. That's where I started this whole thing at, man. Was listening to what Wim Hof said about it and the improvements to your immune system and all these different things. And brother, I haven't been sick in 7-8 months. I don't get sick much anyways, right? But
right.
I walk around like I'm invincible to anybody. It's a good feeling.
Well, that's that, like you said, there's a difference between being healthy and in good health.
Right.
So you could say, well, shit, I'm healthy. I'm not in the hospital. I'm not like these people that are hooked up to oxygen or in wheelchairs. but yet are you really in good health? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like mentally,
Yeah.
can you deal? Because I know, like I said, when I had sleep apnea, man, I'm thinking back, I was kind of like Joe Biden at certain points, where I was just
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
completely out of it.
That's funny, man.
So
I don't want to turn this political, but yeah, sleep apnea pretty much sums that guy up.
he's the walking poster boy for sleep apnea.
Poster boy for sleep
But
apnea.
anyway, well, let's go back, man. Talk about give us a little Cook's tour of your law enforcement career.
Yeah, man. So I'm a native to Las Vegas. I'm born and
Uh,
raised.
Me
Yeah.
too. What high school?
I started at Valley, and
Ah,
what high school were you in?
Western.
Western. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I ended up graduating from Votech and ran into some trouble at Valley High School, and probably just, there was a lot of tense moments at that school. That was, shortly after I graduated is when that shooter shot Mr. Piggott at Valley High School. I don't know if you remember that.
I that must have been. Oh, I'm 49 now, so that might have been a little before my time. I'm
Oh
thinking.
yeah, shit. You're 10 to 11 years younger than I am. So
Right.
yeah, so that was it was a tough time. Anyways, I ended up going to Votech and getting a pretty solid education in data processing and engineering, drafting, and that's where I started my career as a draftsman. And then I went to work for the Department of Transportation as an engineer. When I left there to take the PD job, I had gotten my certificate as an engineering technician 5, which is very similar to having a degree in engineering. So,
Huh.
and I hated every minute of it. I just, I enjoyed the job for having a job, but I just didn't enjoy the profession. I'd always wanted to be a cop, and during that whole time, I was, performing and recording records and touring and doing, living my life in the music industry with that job as an engineer because it allowed me so much time off and I was able to tour. I ended up coming back off a tour from Russia with a group called Autograph, and
Oh no shit. 80s rock group. Yeah.
yeah, and I went over there. I toured for about 17 weeks with these guys, and then I came back and I thought, I was 28, I think at the time, and I thought I'm just not going to do what I don't want to do anymore. And I wasn't going to be 27 in the morning. I was going to be fucking 29. So as time's slipping away, and it hits you hard if you're waking up and not doing what you love to do. And I thought, man, I've always wanted to be a cop. I'm just going to cut my hair off and go down and test. I tested for both Metro and Henderson here in the Las Vegas Valley. I got hired by both. I ended up taking the job with Henderson, and just never looked back, man. I promoted through the ranks and did well with that job. I did take a break and went out on tour with the guys from Arrowsmith, Jimmy Crespo, who had a
Oh,
record out with Arrowsmith, Between a Rock and a Hard Spot, and the violinist from Kansas, David Ragsdale. I went out and toured with these guys. I took a break from work. I was a narcotics detective. I took a
well,
hiatus.
that you talk about a contradiction, man. You're going from being a narcotics detective to keep hanging out with rock bands now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a weird crossover, man. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of crossover when I came back to work in the conditioning and the practice, because as a drummer singer, I was extremely practiced, heavily practiced. I practiced for thousands of hours because I just had an innate fear of sucking. I didn't want to get on stage and not be able to perform. And for that, I've had a very solid music career. I became very close friends with Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush, and
Huh.
we hung out a lot together. We rode motorcycles, and I was his firearms instructor. He hired me to perform on the Drumming in the Style of Neil Peart DVD. I did that, so it's his picture on the front. I'm the drummer playing all of the tunes, 8 of their biggest hits up to that time, and then my music career just shot through the roof with that. And man, I owned a video studio for years, but all the while I'm back to work at the PD, and all of this stuff is happening simultaneously. And talk about a wild ride, brother. It just went, everything was happening at the level 10, right? Everything I'd ever wanted in music was happening. Everything I'd ever wanted in the police world was happening.
That's
And
wild.
yeah, now we get to this point in my life, and I'm still, I still have a full run music studio here in Vegas, and still performing. I'm still recording records for that I donate to the Wounded Blue. So they're for
Oh,
sale. All the proceeds go to the Wounded Blue, Randy Sutton's company, his 501(c), and yeah, man, I just just a great run with everything, brother. It's
what
been
what
awesome.
what's your band called? Or do you have what do you just
Yeah,
independently
so
play or
no, the band that I still own is Phoenix. We've
Phoenix?
headlined at the Mandalay Bay for over 20 years. The band is now out touring on Royal Caribbean and headlining on the Rock and Roll cruise ship tour. So they're out for 2 weeks and back for 2 weeks. And when we're here, when the band is here, which I kind of retired from performance with them because of my work in law enforcement, but they when they're here, they're performing and headlining for the station's casinos out at Red Rock Casino or Sunset Station. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so they're still really they're
Do,
probably the single most popular cover band in the country.
when we're done here, if you could send me all the links to your band's pages, like your Facebooks, your
Sure.
YouTube, whatever, I'll post them in the description in this episode.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of the tunes that I recorded on a record that I did that's out right now called Between Two Hats. And that's a record that I'm doing all of the drumming and singing on, all the lead vocals and everything. It's all covers from, like 70s R&B, 70s, early 80s R&B. And the next record that's coming out is all kind of 80s tunes, Sting and Genesis and the Police and groups like that I'm covering and playing all the drums on. And so yeah, so it's pretty cool. I'll send you all that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just all your links, because like I said, I want to post them because who knows, somebody might hear this and be like, I want to check this guy's music out, or I want to check out your, the critical incident response and all those things. So did you work under Chief Mayberry?
Chief Mayberry was a very close friend of mine. Yes,
Oh wow.
in fact, Chief Tommy Burns and then Chief Mayberry took his place, and I actually played in a band with Mike Mayberry and his brother, um, both excellent musicians, and Mike Mayberry, who was a Metro SWAT officer, who was an
Oh,
outstanding bass player. And yeah, so a small circle of people, but yeah, I know all those guys. They were all very close friends of mine.
damn, that's crazy. Small world. Yeah, I talked to Chief Mayberry years ago when I was looking for employment. One of them was Henderson Police. So he actually called me back. So we had a
Cool.
he was a cool guy. The one
Yeah,
time I
super.
talked to him. So
Yeah. Yeah, he was a great guy. For me, he was a great chief. Everybody's got their opinions about, chiefs of police and all the rhetoric that surrounds the political existence in a chief's position. But Mike was always a real human being to me. He always treated me with the utmost respect, and a lot of it, and he did most people, I think. And here was the thing. I think if people focused more on doing the work instead of trying to get out of the work, they'd probably have better relationships with their higher ups. You know what I'm saying?
that's real shit. If you're fighting with your superiors all the time,
Yeah.
then although I will say, and you probably run up against this a lot when you were on the force, you get a lot of these desk jockeys that are trying to tell you how to do your job when you're out there in the field.
It happens. It happens a lot. And I think on that note, it's funny because there's two ways to process that information. You can either be open to input, or you can look at it like, somebody doesn't know as much as you know, and you know more than everyone. And there's two ways that wheel spins. So I always try to, take that input with a grain of salt when it needed to be, or open the doors and say, okay, let me listen to what's going on here. Maybe I can do something better. But I think that's one of, and for good cops out there, and there's a multitude of them. those cops are really open to learn no matter where that information comes from, because there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. And that was one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on here, because so many civilians are very critical, especially now, in how police work is done. And it's like, in my opinion, I've never been a police officer. I would have loved to have been a police officer, but unfortunately, due to my vision, that ain't gonna happen. But a lot of people, it's like you want to just tell them, hey, put the badge on for a day, man. Let's see if you still have the same opinion, the same attitude towards it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is what we're up against right now, man. And for your listeners, and I, not to put a selfless plug, but I've got a book out called Anatomy of a Critical Incident: Navigating Controversy. And although this book is written primarily for investigators and for boots on the ground that are out living in this environment, this scrutinous environment for law enforcement, it really clarifies a couple of things. And here's one of the primary things I talk about and that I focus on in this book is the narrative, right? So
Yeah.
we get officers that are, they go out, they end up in a use of force, and they're immediately demonized or criminalized for this. And this is one of the only professions where, because something looks bad on video, or because the narrative comes across because of whatever the charge is in the case, the ethnicity, or a white cop and a black suspect, or a black cop and a Hispanic suspect, or whatever that is, people look for the most sensationalized narrative, and then they turn that narrative into a passionate belief that something's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, in law enforcement, it's not about a passionate belief. And I've told people this before, that I'm doing cases for. Somebody will tell me, well, I think that X, Y, and Z. Well, I don't care what you think. I care what you know. I want to know what you know about this case, because what you think is based on a very loose narrative, and on a narrative that's emotionally charged. Everything we look at in law enforcement has got emotional conductivity associated with it. As human beings, information enters our brain flat, without meaning. We give meaning to it as human beings. So when a human being looks at a crisis, an officer involved in critical thinking in a crisis, facing the consequences of life and death, especially under the constraints of time, they look at the outcome and become emotionally charged by that outcome. They then develop theories about what they believe happened, and those are terms I don't want to hear. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you think. I care what you know. I care what you've objectively reviewed, dispassionately and objectively, based on the facts of the case. And if we could get that through to the public and let them understand and about how an officer makes decisions in the field, and how an officer is they're a cross section of our community. These ladies and gentlemen in law enforcement are not superhuman. They don't get the level of training that the public thinks that they do, and that is a problem for us, because you look at professionalism in law enforcement as opposed to superstardom in, let's say, the NBA. The public thinks that officers on the street are operating at an NBA level of experience.
Like every day you're training, right?
Exactly. Every day you're training, every day you're facing those low frequency, high risk events. When an officer's involved in a shooting, in most cases, that's the first time they've ever had their weapon out of the holster facing a deadly threat. Right? They may have drawn their weapon, but it was because of an unknown threat. But, this is a very low frequency event, and the officers don't have the repetition to be conditioned with their responses. And folks just don't understand that this is an impossible environment for a human being to make a decision in a split second. And those decisions are made on, in some cases, incomplete information, misinterpreted information. The data that they're getting is fraught with contextual errors, and there's all kinds of things to consider in these cases. And I don't want to get too technical. I probably already have, but
I think it's good. It needs to happen. That's why we got you here.
and the point being with all of this is that, until you realize what it's like to face your own death in a situation, especially when you are protecting the lives of others and yourself, right? And this is another component. Officers are out there making decisions about using force in situations they don't need to be involved in, right? They're involved in them because they've taken the oath to protect and serve.
Right,
And
right.
that oftentimes gets overlooked. And the officer is now on trial for murder. Well, let me tell you the difference between the narrative between a murder and the application of a deadly force tactic. A murder is the intentional killing of another human being through deliberate means and malevolence. A deadly force tactic is a decision to apply a tactic whereby deadly force is a part of that tactic to save the life of another person or the officer themselves.
Right.
The application of a deadly force tactic is certainly not murder by definition. But when it reaches the bottleneck of the investigation and the narrative, the officer is under investigation for a homicide. Well, the homicide, that term it simply outlines a manner of death. It doesn't mean murder. But when someone hears that an officer is under investigation for homicide, they immediately believe that officer is under investigation for murder. And that's a mincing of terms. And that's where these narratives start to get blown apart at the seams. And officers are going down for this stuff unnecessarily.
Well, and this is like we were talking about when I talked to you on the phone a few days ago. In my opinion, and I'm going to say this, I don't believe Derek Chauvin should be sitting in prison right now, because we saw, George Floyd was screaming, "I can't breathe," when he was in the back of the police car before anybody was even on his back.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of information in that case that the general public just doesn't know about. And because of my standing in the community, I'm very cautious about what I bring up with that. But there are excerpts on in social media and experts coming on that are pathologists and doctors, and everybody says the same thing, that Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. That
No.
It was completely. Now, there was an incident, and the incident happened the way it happened, and I don't believe that Derek Chauvin did himself any favors in his behavior, and he had a pre-existing reputation. All of those things came into play on this, but this case was not about the officer's behavior. It was about the outcome, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, Max, is that when we focus on the outcome, like in that case, right, then that investigation is going to be about the outcome, not about the behavior that led to the outcome. And
Right.
I think that everybody understands that environment was not what it was purported to be.
No. Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you watched the actual body cam footage versus the cell phone footage, which was like 30 seconds long, you'd see a whole different story. I mean, he's coming out of the store. They're putting cuffs on him. He's in the cop car screaming, "I can't breathe." They pull him out of the car to try to see if he can, whatever. They're going to try to clear his airwaves to get him on the ground. Anyway, anyone should watch that body cam video, not the cell phone video. That's ridiculous. That's just, like you said, creating a narrative and making people put their feelings into it when that's not what it was.
And the state of the nation at the time stated that it basically dictated the fact that case was never going to be about right or wrong. It was going to be about win or lose, right? And that's what it turns into. Dirty pool on both the prosecution side and the defense side, and it becomes about win or lose the case. If both sides of it looked at it for judicious purpose only, right and wrong. Are there training issues? Certainly. Are there, it's fraught with issues as far as police contact goes, but it ain't murder. I can tell you that. In my opinion, it ain't murder, and I don't stand alone in that. I don't think. I think there's a large faction of people that would agree with that, you included.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm the one who brought it up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if anyone gets on your shit about that, just say Max brought it up.
Yeah, that's Max's problem, not my problem.
That's his feeling that, but yeah, no, and there was, you talked about conditioning versus training, which was interesting. And I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, yeah. So, and I think, we had talked a little bit. In one of my classes in the Enhanced Force Investigations course, which is one of my 3 core classes that I teach, I talk a lot about training because when I'm investigating a case, part of the one of the tools I use is to establish a mindset with the officer involved, and a lot of that has to do with training and experience, the competence that has been developed through that training and experience, and the confidence that backs the officer's behavior in those moments during a use of force. And when we look at the training and what we train officers, and I've got a slide in my class. It's a short video of an orangutan driving a golf cart. He's got one hand slung over the passenger seat, kick back, working all the levers and the pedals, steering this thing effectively down a path on a golf course. They trained an orangutan to drive a golf cart. Would you trust that orangutan to drive an 18-wheeler on a freeway? Right?
No.
We have trained this orangutan to do a thing that resembles driving. But to get into a truck with that orangutan, you would be on your last brain cell to think that that was going to be an effective and safe application of that training. So I'll boil that down to say this, is that we can train any person to do anything, but we cannot condition that person or even create the time to condition a person to be good at all the things that need to be attended to as a law enforcement officer. Right. And all that falls on the shoulders of the individual officer to make themselves good at what they've been trained at. It's not enough to sit through a defensive tactics course for 4 hours once a year. It's not enough to go and qualify on the range twice a year by the post standard. If you don't invest in yourself and condition yourself to draw that weapon effectively from 3 levels of retention so that you do it at a level of automaticity when you are faced with that unknown or deadly threat, right? An unknown threat or a deadly threat. Officers that condition to be good at it will draw that weapon without knowledge of having done it because it's happening procedurally and at a level below a conscious awareness that it's happening because the officer's focus is on the threat. The response to that threat has become procedurally sound, and they're able to draw that weapon and manipulate it effectively and safely to address a potential threat. Well, many officers draw their weapons twice a year on the range during qualifications, and that's not enough to be effective in the decision-making process. Those officers that condition to be good at manipulating their weapons, their baton, transitioning between taser and firearm, when they condition to be good at those things, they use less force. They draw their weapon less. They are more confident with their abilities. So those are buried under the stimulus, if that makes sense.
So the trigger happy cop, as it were, is probably a not so very well conditioned cop. Is that a correct statement?
Very possibly, and it's not a blanket statement, but an officer who's not comfortable or confident in drawing their weapon will, in many cases, they will go to that weapon because they're not certain they'll be able to get it out under pressure. So that weapon comes out more often. I've got a case right now, and I think it just pled out of Georgia, and this officer drew his weapon incessantly. He would come out screaming. He didn't know the term de-escalation, which that's a very sensitive term with me, and I'll talk about that later if you want. But
yes, yeah, absolutely.
He came in hot all the time. The weapon was always out, and unfortunately for this officer, It came out after a pursuit. He was amped. His finger was on the trigger. He was yelling commands, and he inadvertently shot the suspect in the head, and
Oh,
and it killed him. And this is what I'm talking about, is that there's a level of conditioning and training that, the training starts us down the path, conditioning takes us down the path, and creates good officers that are competent. And that competent is backed with confidence. Confidence minimizes the need to respond in particular ways that may be over the top. And that's why I've developed a tool called the data zone to really get to the bottom of that mindset, understand where the officer was at in their competence. And was that confidence backed with competence, and where did the training and experience and conditioning and all of that feed into their mindset? Because that's what we need to know in these investigations.
so here's a musical reference for you, since you're a musician. To see what condition their condition is in.
Man, you nailed it. That's exactly right. To see what condition their condition is in. It's
Right.
exactly in fact, now I got to remember that, because that is a perfect interrelatable term.
You could use that song in one of your videos or something. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, I think that's Foreigner, isn't it?
No, it's Kenny Rogers when he was with what's the group called? Something Condition, Mid Condition, or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
See
Okay.
what condition my condition was in. That's like before he
Right.
got started in country, for real.
Exactly. Yeah. That was that was 60s rock right there.
Yeah. See, I go back, man. I know my music.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
But anyway, yeah. Well, geez, let's talk about de-escalation real quick, because you brought it up a little while ago.
Yeah, I hate the term. The term it's inappropriately taught. It's taught as a tactic, and it's not a tactic. It's a goal.
Aha.
And officers have been attempting to achieve the goal of de-escalation for 150 years, since Sir Robert Peel ratified modern policing. And so and here's the thing: de-escalation is always going to be trained for what it is. But I want to make this clear to your listeners: de-escalation is a goal, and you may have to escalate force to reach a level and the goal of de-escalation.
Aha. See, this is great. I'm glad you're talking about this.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes it's misinterpreted, because a subject will not respond to an officer's attempts to contact them, communicate with them, contain them, control them, and the officer has to escalate force. But then the officer is arbitrarily alleged to have failed to de-escalate that scenario. Well, de-escalation is incumbent on the behavior of the suspect that the cop is dealing with, period. That's all there is to it. And if that communication is foiled by the suspect, because there are just people out there who don't want to talk to cops, and they've already got their mind made up about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. When an officer comes in and the tactics that are being sold as de-escalation fail, then the allegation is that the officer failed at de-escalation, and that's inaccurate. As de-escalation as a goal, if an officer comes in and they come in lukewarm, they're ready to go hot or ready to go cold, depending on where the suspect takes them, it's incumbent on the behavior of the suspect in those moments. If the suspect requires the officer to escalate force, the officer has to maintain discretionary privileges to escalate force without considering retribution from the department or discipline or criminal charges or any of these things, because it's a complete bastardization of the terminology. And it largely it's in place because de-escalation is a hot key training topic that generates a lot of money. The federal government they'll deny funds to departments in certain cases if they don't get certain de-escalation training. And it becomes problematic, because then what we get, Max, is we get officers that fail to engage when they need to escalate force, because the de-escalation tactics as they're trained are not effective. and they won't be effective, right? There are
Right.
certain
Yeah.
people that respond to de-escalation tactics as they're trained, but the goal of de-escalation has to be the focus. That gives the officers discretion and decision-making power to escalate force when it's required to do so. Those officers that don't, and they get wrapped around the axles on the tactic of de-escalation rather than the goal of de-escalation, we will see a certain level of lack of engagement or failure to engage, and people are getting hurt. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality out there. And again, I'm all about training officers to come in with a certain level of chill, right?
Right.
Don't
Right.
make things more than they are, but certainly don't let them become more than they are, because the tactic of de-escalation doesn't appear to be working. It's not your fault as an officer. It's the suspect, and we've got to be able to escalate to control. That's
Yeah.
just my view on it.
Well, like I've seen, I like a lot of body cam videos, and a lot of times, like if it's a car chase, especially, and the suspect starts running, the first thing the cops are going to say is, "Get your fucking hands up." They'll use profanity and things like that. So this goes back to what you're talking about, where you have to escalate to de-escalate in a lot of cases.
Sure. Yeah. And listen, language is a big hit. It's a hot point, right? When an officer is running, but they're emotionally charged. They're human beings. And listen, there's a difference between saying, "Hey, put your fucking hands up," or "Put your hands up, you fucking idiot," right? There's two.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've seen that too.
Yeah, it happens, but there's a difference, right? There's an expletive happening there for a reason, right? The officer is trying to make a point. They're trying to achieve a change in behavior on the suspect side, and I give very little credence to language at that level. Now, there is an inappropriate use of language. Cops are professionals. They should handle themselves professionally, especially in today's day and age. But when the stakes are down, right? When the chips are down and the stakes are high, language becomes the officers aren't monitoring what's coming out of their mouth. They're monitoring a subject's behavior. So they're going to say things that that are naturally part of the contextual environment. If it's a high stress environment, you're going to get high stress language. Officers and human beings don't have the ability to control that like the public thinks that they do. It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't work that way. We still look at it. There's still problems out there with officers being unprofessional, but the problem with it is that it's all caught on video. So if you're an officer and you're listening to this, be aware of how you approach people. Be aware of the words that are coming out of your mouth to the extent that you are able to be. When the chips are down and the stress is high, you may not be able to monitor the words that are coming out of your mouth. And "put your fucking hands up" might be the best line for you to give, right? And that becomes, it's no longer part of the assessment, if that makes sense.
Well, I remember seeing one where somebody had stolen the patrol car. A suspect had stolen the patrol car. And when they finally caught up to the guy, I want to say this was in Wisconsin or somewhere in the Midwest, but I remember the cop was so pissed off. He's pulling the guy out of the car and he's going, "You stupid motherfucker." And he's calling him all kinds of names. And I'm thinking, Jesus, hey, I'm totally on board with what the cop's doing, but I'm sure the department isn't necessarily on board. And like you said, it's all on video.
Yeah. Do you remember the Alton Sterling shooting?
Oh yeah, of course. That was part of the George Floyd sandwich.
Yeah. So, and in Alton Sterling's
in the sense of they use that as more ammo. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. And the shooting was justified. The officers, they used deadly force because deadly force was required.
Right.
But the first thing he says when he gets up, because he's exhausted, he's just been involved in a deadly use of force. Alton Sterling almost got his weapon out of his pocket. The officers were spent. He gets up, and the first thing he says as he's trying to catch his breath is, "You stupid motherfucker," after he's been shot 5 times and laying on the ground dying, right? That doesn't play well on video.
No.
That's, you know what I mean? But I understand the officer's strife. I understand why he's saying it. He's not judging the guy's intellectual prowess on the podium. The guy's dying now. all he had to do was not resist and he wouldn't be dying. That was a stupid move. The,
Right.
the officer is responding in an emotional way to the behavior of Alton Sterling. And the problem is that it's wildly misinterpreted in the narrative. And it's not the officer's, it's not his opinion of Alton Sterling, it's his opinion of his behavior. And I
Yeah.
get, but it doesn't sound good. And I don't want to have to explain that on the stand as an expert. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It becomes an excuse after the fact, right? Let's just avoid it if we can. And those are those little moments that become training valuable.
Yeah. Teaching moments, as they call them.
That's it.
So,
It's a teaching moment, you know. And luckily, our officers survived that. That was a harrowing experience for them. This was a big kid. Alton Sterling was no joke, and he had a gun in his pocket, and he was going for it, and he had been tased, and he wasn't giving up the fight. And he never ever said a cuss word. It was the
wow.
officers that sounded like thugs. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and that's okay. That's where they work. That's the language they're used to speaking. But it requires explanation on the stand, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk about critical incident review. What made you decide, hey, wait a minute, there's a need for something like this?
So strange story. I have no idea how I got here. I could sum it up with that.
Okay.
So at my department, the Metro was going through not a consent decree, but some sort of a settlement agreement. The DOJ was involved. There was a number of shootings in Metro. The DOJ got involved. They revamped their policy. The ACLU went through and recommended a bunch of changes. Well, I got promoted into the training bureau in Henderson. The first thing I did was I took the ACLU's recommendations for Metro and I sat down and I rewrote Henderson's policy. I put together the entire policy. I went through the entire ACLU document and anything I incorporated into our policy from the ACLU, on a separate document, I wrote 90 pages of why I adopted certain components or why I did not adopt certain components. We completely rewrote the policy. I submitted our policy to the ACLU and they approved it, lock, stock, and barrel. That was our
Wow.
policy for about 6 years until I retired in 18. And so during that time, I became the use of force SME, the subject matter expert. I was sent to a ton of training around the country. All the training had to do with, human factors, human performance under stress, decision making, psychological components of decision making. I became an advanced specialist in force analysis. I had, several week-long courses in force analysis under my belt. I subsequently became a forensic video review and examiner and a video analyst. So that tied directly into my use of force work that I was doing. Well, I was then brought on by a company out of Minnesota to teach for them across the country. My department allowed me to, balance my time and teach for this company. I'd work overtime, make comp time. I'd use the comp time to go teach. And I became kind of a nationally known instructor in the realm of human performance as it relates to critical thinking regarding use of force. I did that for 9.5 years for this company I worked for. The name of the company is Force Science. And I became their lead senior and most requested instructor over that 9.5 years. And during those classes, I got one question incessantly, no matter what. The question was asked, hey, this is great information, but what do I do with it? And I started to put together then my investigative course, because with my department, I developed the use of force training and analysis unit, which was adopted by multiple large agencies across the country. And it's kind of become a go-to model for use of force analysis. The IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, nominated us as one of the most progressive departments for the development of that unit. I taught at IECP in 2016 regarding the unit. That
Not to
started
confuse it with
to,
the Insane Clown Posse, by the way.
yeah, that's right. It's not, yeah, not ICP, IACP.
IACP.
And so, anyways, the path just laid itself out. As I retired in 2016, I think I took on my first expert case, still teaching. 2018, I retired. 2019, I stepped away from Force Science and developed my own classes under my umbrella, under critical incident review. And I started teaching in 2020. San Bernardino County, I believe, is where I held my first class. We've been holding classes for the last 5, almost 6 years now, and they've been selling out across the country. And it's all about the application of scientific principles and the investigation of officers who are critical thinkers and making decisions under the constraints of time and the consequences of life and death. And it's great information, and it's being accepted open arms across the country. I've been retained by and contracted with California DOJ to train all of their investigators, all of their attorneys, both on the civil and criminal side.
Oh, wow.
I've been contracted by Army CID, the Criminal Investigation Division of the Army, to teach all of their leadership and their investigators. I've still got an ongoing relationship with them. I have been contracted by Arizona DPS, Texas Rangers, Texas DPS, U.S. Marshals. The list goes on, and multiple state and local agencies across the country are signing up for my enhanced force investigations course and my forensic video review and examination course that tie in together as investigative tools in these critical incidents. So don't know how I got here, brother, but I'm here. And I just answer the phone when it rings, and I go where people need me.
So it's not just police departments that are hiring you. You've got military factions, like Marines and Army and National Guard that are hiring you too.
Yeah. Anybody with an investigative division are bringing me on in relation to these critical incidents, and I'm taking on a number of civilian cases where there's self-defense claims. And, we just had a huge case in Tucson, and we got a defense favorable acquittal on the case based on these human performance factors and decision making. And it was a huge video case, so I had a lot of video analysis to do in that. But yeah, it's across the board, brother. It's not just law enforcement. I'm teaching citizen review boards. I'm turning the lights on for a lot of different entities that are associated with the adjudication of law enforcement cases.
Wow. I'm sure at some point you might even get into workplace violence type stuff, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It could certainly. Yeah. It certainly could. And there's a lot of security work out there too that I don't spend a lot of time in, but there's a huge marketplace for it. And security work has a lot to do with workplace violence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like the active shooter classes you have to take,
Yep.
that kind of thing. They make you take those in, like state agencies and things like that.
Yep. Yeah, they sure do. Yeah, it's a never-ending well, brother. And I feel like I'm just getting started. You know what I mean?
That is awesome. And by the way, I forgot to do this when you came on, but everybody who's in law enforcement, military, first responders, any of that, we always thank them for their service before they come on. So, when they come on in the beginning of the show, I forgot to do that for you. So again, I want to thank you for your service, first of all.
It's absolutely my pleasure to do it for the public that I grew up in, brother. This is my hood.
Your community, man. This is what you do.
That's
And give some of the any information you want people to know. This would be the time to spit it out. Whether it's about your music, whether it's about your, the critical incident review, any of that. The book that you've written.
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon. I'll start there. And it's not a light read. It's 452 pages of number 9 font, so don't read it while you're on the toilet. You will go paralyzed. Um, but a lot of great information in the book. I'm really proud of the book, and it's taken me a while. I was very tentative putting that out. I suffer from, Dunning-Kruger and the imposter syndrome component of that, and I always have. And it's just because I'm concerned. I want to make sure the information I'm putting out is accurate and helpful. I believe it is. I've gotten some great reviews on the book. It's been reviewed and it's been through the process. So I'm very proud of that. Amazon.com, search the book, Anatomy of a Critical Incident, or you can search my name, James Borden or Jamie Borden. It'll come up. My website is criticalincidentreview.com. Our classes are listed on that website. They are open to the public as well as law enforcement. We host classes for both. We've got a form you can fill out to request hosting a class. My COO and colleague of many years, Danny King, will handle that business. And join us on our LinkedIn page, my personal LinkedIn page, jamie.borden. A lot of my music is in my my profile. I've got some videos in there. I record music primarily now to release these records, and then the proceeds are being, funneled through to Randy Sutton's 5013C Wounded Blue. They do a lot of great work for officers. They're making a difference, and I stand behind them 100%. So if I can ever give back, that's where I give back is to them, and my music ties into that. So if you're interested in it, stay close. We're going to have a site up where you can purchase that music, and that all of that money will go straight to Randy Sutton.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Wounded Blue, what they do is they help first responders that have been wounded or killed in the line of duty. So that way their families can pay for the medical bills, because a lot of times what what Randy's told us is these departments, it's kind of like the paper plate syndrome. When your use runs out, you're not useful to the department. Well, guess what? We're not paying your medical bills anymore, buddy, or your burial or any of that type of stuff. So the family's screwed in a lot of those cases. So this is a very noble cause for sure.
It is, and he's doing great work. If you guys, if you follow the Wounded Blue, you'll see a lot of the great work that they're doing. One recent case was very, very touching. An officer was given a check for $5,000 and then was told that they have committed to $5,000 a month for the next 11 months. So they literally donated $5,000 a month to this officer's family while he's recovering from a traumatic brain injury. And you just, that kind of help is, you just can't put a price tag on it. It's worth far more money than the tag value of that. You know what I mean?
And is this officer expected to make a full recovery?
I don't know that the officer will ever go back to work in law enforcement. He was attacked during the riots in Ferguson and sustained a very traumatic brain injury. There's more information on this. I think you can see one of the Randy just sent me a link to it, but I think it's out there, and unfortunately I don't have that link. Maybe I'll send that to you so you can share that with your listenership.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's a great charity. I stand behind it. I swear by it, and that's where anything that I can give back, I give back through the Wounded Blue.
Man, that's the way. That's awesome. The best possible charity you can donate to. It's not like these the ones you see on TV about these animals are tortured, and which a lot of that's bullshit. They just pocket that money anyway.
The crazy thing is if you're getting calls about a charity, if they've got the money to pay call takers, very little of that money is going toward the cause, right?
Actually, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just, I'm very aware of that. There's a lot of law enforcement funds that have call takers that are and they may be donating their time. I don't know the backstory on a lot of that, but that is it's a big network of people, and in many of those cases, very small percentage of the money goes to the cause.
And that's why I wanted. This is a good point you're bringing up now. But I'll get these calls all the time. We're calling from the police officers union, or we're calling for first responders to raise money for, and they try to sound sincere, and a lot of times, man, it's a scam.
Yeah, it is. I don't even, if I'm not looking for the charity, then I'm not going to take a call from the charity. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I have to find it. And I would recommend this to your listenership. If you want to give a charitable donation, seek it out. Don't respond to a phone call or an email or even snail mail. You get an envelope in the mail. Listen, it costs money to send those things out. That means the bottom line is very, very reduced. And if you're looking to donate to a charity, do it by word of mouth. Find the charity that you believe in, but do the work and seek it out, because charities that are giving money to the bottom line and donating the money where it goes, they don't have the money to send out mailers. They don't have the money to pay call takers. They don't have the money to have people sitting and writing emails to beg for your money. So
Right.
Seek it out and give the money where it's going to do the most good. And I get it. People have to get paid to do what they do. And I appreciate that. And I've told this to Randy Sutton too. He does an enormous amount of work, and he doesn't monetize it. Randy Sutton is a retired officer, and he gets by on what he gets by on. His work goes to the troops, and I respect that deeply.
Absolutely. Well, he's got a passion for it, for sure. I mean, it's not even, this isn't a dude who's trying to make some money. This is a guy who's really down for the cause and has been there. And I mean, he went through that himself. So
Yep, he certainly did.
It's personal for him.
Yep, absolutely. And I've known Randy for 30 years. My brother worked for Randy. Randy was my brother's sergeant, back in the day when my brother retired Metro. But yeah, I've known Randy Sutton for many, many years. And this is a cop's cop.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. Or as he would like to call himself, a warrior.
A warrior. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
So, well, man, Jamie, this has been great, man. I appreciate you spending time with me here to kind of talk about, we had covered a lot of topics. So, we'll do it again. This is definitely going to be up. Stay on with me though, while we end the recording. And and for the rest of you, any parting words?
I am glad to be here. It's an honor. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been, you found me organically, I think, through a podcast I did with Randy, as a matter of fact, and that weird connection is there. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity, Max. I anytime I get to talk about what it is that we do and the training and the misinterpreted data that's out there in this ultra scrutinous world, we don't need to be defunding law enforcement. We need to be funding it and supporting it and getting society back to a livable and comfortable point of being.
Yeah, no more jungle mentality. That shit is not cool. So anyway, on that note, bitches, I am Maxwell Silverhammer. This is the Nothing Sacred interview with Jamie Borden. And that's the story there, bitches. See ya.
We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. With Maxwell Silverhammer. We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.